So as we look at our next example in our graphing quadratic equations in vertex form, let me remind you of what our equation looks like in vertex form. Now you'll see this is the first example that we are given in A in our problem. So that's going to change a couple things. But the first thing is we've got to turn this into standard form that's in standard and put it into vertex form. So I'm going to do that like we started yesterday, and I'm going to group those first two terms together. Now what I'm going to initially start with is let's pull that A out to the front. So I'm going to divide both of those terms by a -2. And that's going to leave me with -2 times the quantity of x squared plus 2x, plus what I need to complete my square. And I'll have my +2 on the outside, and then I'm going to borrow my completed the square term from that 2. Now I'll do this just like we did yesterday. We're going to take half of b, which is our 2 term, and square that. That's going to give me a 1. Now you might immediately want to put a 1 in here, but let me caution you too. At the beginning of this problem, we pulled this -2 out. We pulled it out of all 3 of these terms, even the term that wasn't there yet. So if you look at my distributive property here, I'd have -2 times my x squared term times my 2x term and times my 1. So that's not just a regular 1, that is actually a -2. So over here, I'm going to borrow a -2, and then I'm going to rewrite. So this is going to have my -2 of an A on the outside. This is going to give me the perfect square binomial of x plus 1 squared. And then I'll have my 2 minus a -2, which gives me +4. Now it's easy to see my pieces. My h, because that's a +1, has to be -1, moving my parabola to the left. My k is going to be the +4, which is going to move my parabola up. Now for the first time, I'm seeing an A of -2 in these problems. Now that's going to do 2 changes to my parabola. That is going to open it down because it's negative, but that 2 is also going to stretch my parabola vertically. It's going to get taller faster. Now, if we remember those directions I gave you from the parent graph yesterday, so we have -2 squares to 4, -1 squares to 1, 0 squares to 0, 1 squares to 1, and 2 squares to 4. What we're going to see here, because I have a stretch, I'm going to have to multiply that whole column by -2. So 4 times -2 is -8. 1 times -2 is -2. 0 stays the same. 1 turns to a -2. And 4 turns to a -8. So now I won't need these values anymore because my A is going to flip and stretch. All right. So let's find our vertex. Here's our vertex at -1, 4. I'm going to plot that here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to use these directions here. Instead of going out 1, up 1 like I did when A was 1, I'm going to go out 1, down 2 because it's being flipped and stretched. Instead of out 2, up 4, we're going to go out 2, down 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in both directions, flipping my parabola downward and making it much thinner than it was from the parent graph. Now, if I consider my domain and range, my domain is still going to be all real values, but my range is going to reach a maximum value this time. So my range is going to be all values of y such that y is less than or equal to 4. Now moving down, in examples 3 and 4, it's going to, instead of asking us to graph, it's asking us to write the equation. So again, I'm going to use Vertex form to write my equation. So you can see that they gave us a point. We'll call that point x and y, which is 3 and 4 on our graph. And we can easily find the vertex. There's the vertex that meets in the middle, and it's at the point 1, 2. Be careful with the change in the graph. This would be a 1 and it goes as high as a 2. So that becomes my HK. Now what I don't know is A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all 4 of those values in this formula when y is 4. I'm going to leave A because I don't know what it is. X is 3, H is 1, and K is 2. So when I put everything in, I'm going to simplify. 3 minus 1 is 2 squared, making that 4a plus 2. Now I'll quickly solve for a. And a is going to equal 1/2. Be careful when you divide that 4 that you don't divide the 2 instead. Once I have a, I'm going to use my vertex and my a to write my equation. I'm not going to need that 3, 4 anymore. A is 1/2. H is 1 and K is 2. Now we can always expand that to put that in standard form, or we can leave it in vertex form depending on how they ask us to leave it. All right, and example 4 is very similar. It doesn't show us the graph, but it gives us the vertex and it gives us the point. This will be our XY. This will be our HK. Again, they did not give us A, so we're going to go and solve for A first. When Y is 1 and X is -2, H is 2 and K is 3. So I have 1 equals A times -4 squared plus 3. I'll make that 16a, and I'll solve. This gives me -2 equals 16a. I'll divide both sides by 16. Again, be careful on that division. A is going to be -1/8. So when I rewrite this expression, I know my A, I know my H is 2, and my K is 3. Go ahead and try those 6 problems, and I'll answer all questions in class tomorrow.